Hello and welcome to In Our Community. My name is Liz Holtz and I'll be your host for today's show. And I'm here with some very special guests to talk about a very important subject. And today I have with me Mina Surya, who is a staff attorney at the Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County, and also Mr. Juan Gil Garcia, who is a DOJ accredited representative, also with the Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County. And they're here today to talk about the Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County's immigration program that they have to work with the immigrants in the community. And welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
I am so excited to have you guys here today because this is such a very important topic, as well as a very timely one. And, as we know, we are a country of immigrants and stuff from our founding forefathers forward. Yet I imagine that, with all the changes that have come together as we've become a bigger and bigger country, more industrialized, more electronified, if you will, and stuff, these things have become much more complex and convoluted than what our founding forefathers faced, right?
Most definitely.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So one of the things is, first of all, most of our viewers probably are not aware of the fact that the Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County even has a program to assist immigrants in our community. So can you tell us a little bit about the program and how long has it been around?
Yes, well, Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County has had an immigration program since 1976. We've been accredited by the Department of Justice as an agency, as a nonprofit, to provide these services since 1977. So we have been serving immigrants in this community for over 40 years. And currently we have a pretty good sized staff, and we have a combination of staff attorneys and also people who are accredited by the Department of Justice to practice immigration law, such as myself. We help people with well, first of all, we need to make sure that they're eligible, and so we do the screenings, of course, and we represent them in their process. Throughout the process, in preparing for them for the interviews, and even accompanying them to their interviews and representing them there.
So what types of, so you're talking about you offer different types of services, so what kind of services do you offer to immigrants in the community?
Quite a vast variety of them. We help legal permanent residents become citizens, apply for U.S. citizenship, and that's called the naturalization process, and we help them through that. We help we help people who are U.S. citizens or legal permanent residents, help them immigrate their family members like spouses or children or parents. We help victims of crimes who maybe don't have a status in the United States. We help them there is a special process for people who have been a victim of a crime in the United States and have cooperated with law enforcement through the investigation and prosecution of the case. And the federal government has special benefits, immigration benefits for this category of people, for example, and we help them through that. We have quite a variety of processes. We including help people get their records from the federal government, for example, when they've had several types of applications through their life with the government and they don't have access to them. We do what's called FOIA application, Freedom of Information Act applications to the government. We help them with that. We help them with background checks. Sometimes in order to figure out whether someone is eligible for a benefit or not, we need to know what happened in their background, in their history, and we help them with background checks first to make sure they are eligible for whatever benefit we may think they are eligible or not.
I think I would only like to add to that we pretty much do everything that it might be available under immigration law, but we don't do employment-based, except for one kind of exception. That's religious worker visas. Besides that, we don't do employment-based. We're a nonprofit funded to serve low-income and medium-income families, focused more on low-income. But we have done, we do limited deportation defense, but we actually also do that. We do motions with the court and representing in court in limited cases, usually in conjunction with other kinds of remedies, like the victims of crimes who find themselves now in court having to prove that they merit to remain in the United States. And I forgot to mention that we do have a site in Gilroy, so we're kind of trying to really be accessible to the community, and we've had presence in other sites like a senior center in East San Jose. So our office is actually really trying to reach out and help people come forward and apply for the benefits that they qualify.
So it sounds like you not only have your main facility on Zanker Road in San Jose, but you also have, it sounds like a satellite office down in Gilroy, which is wonderful.
Yes.
And then also you mentioned that you occasionally I guess do workshops and presentations and things at different community
outreach.
We try to really respond to the needs of the community, and thank you for reminding us of that. We do presentations upon invitation, so we've done presentations at schools, churches, mosques, wherever we're invited, and so.
And they're basically most of the times know your rights presentations where the community, both citizens, people with status, with or without status in the United States, would like to know what to do in case they have an encounter with a federal agent, and how to behave, or what their rights are and what their responsibilities are, what their options are. So we do these kinds of presentations, and then we invite people to come to our office for one-on-one confidential consultations. So if someone, upon listening to a presentation, realizes that maybe I need help for an attorney or an accredited representative to figure out whether I have an option and I can get legal status in the United States, we offer that one-on-one consultation, confidential consultation at our site, both at Zanker in San Jose and in Gilroy.
Yeah, and I would imagine even now with the recent changes with immigration law and things that are kind of up in the air, I know personally I have friends that are here, they're in the naturalization process, and they're concerned about whether they can leave the country, can they not leave the country, should they leave the country, what happens if a parent gets sick and they want to go home, will they be able to come back, things like that. So it sounds like they can set up time to come in and talk to you.
That's most
and get some professional advice about their particular situation or concerns.
Yes, and lawful permanent residents or people who have green cards with certain announcements and executive orders have kind of being concerned, well, where do I stand in this, or
does it apply to me? Does it not? How does that affect me?
Exactly. In general, we do recommend that lawful permanent residents, or just anybody in general, that they understand the rights and responsibilities. And a permanent resident, if they are not sure about what those are, it is important that they have a one-on-one consultation. One thing, for example, that sometimes people don't think about: a permanent resident who's out for more than 6 months or more can be accused of abandonment or at least disrupting their permanent residence. So sometimes if they have to go out of the country for prolonged periods of time, they should consult with an attorney or an accredited agency to try to figure out what are their options, so that they let the U.S. government know that they do not intend to abandon the residency, that they do intend to come back, and how to preserve that permanent residence and not let it affect their ability to become citizens if they choose to become citizens.
Right, because of course the last thing you want to have happen is you get a phone call from your family. Maybe your mother or your father is ill, they go home, they stay to help the family, things take a turn for the worse, next thing you know they're there for 7-8 months, then they come home and surprise.
They can have trouble.
So we want to avoid that.
There's a process in place that we guide people through this. We can help them out. So where the government understands that there are certain circumstances in life that you just need to go and travel. It's a question of knowing what the steps are and what the process is, so you don't get into trouble if you then want to become a U.S. citizen.
Yeah, there are exceptions, and there are things they can do to document their intentions that would later protect them. So yes.
one of the things I'd like to ask you is, there are all these different types of immigration, right? So there's naturalizations, there's different types of visas, and so what are the most common immigration statuses that you see or work with?
There are those like me who are no longer aliens, who are naturalized citizens.
Okay.
So that's one category of immigrants. And there are those who derived or acquired citizenship through their parents. And then there are lawful permanent residents or green card holders. Then there are asylees, refugees who have a path to permanent residence, or people with U status. There are people who entered with a visa and overstayed. There are people who, and technically they're here also with no status. And there are people who enter the border without inspection, without authorization. And there are people who have status that are not permanent, that are temporary, and after those programs end, it's uncertain and it's subject to an announcement by the current administration whether they're going to renew like temporary protected status, or like the program, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals that was created in January of 2012 by the Obama administration.
So we help basically people through all of these processes. Some of the many common ones are the family-based immigration. It's something pretty big in the United States. If you have a U.S. citizen family member, they can petition for certain people, or even a legal permanent resident who is a resident, lives in the United States, would like to immigrate their spouse from the country of origin, let's say.
Or their elderly parents. They may want to bring them here so that they can help go after them here.
Exactly. And children, sons and daughters. So there are different categories, and depending on in which category you fall in, the process will take a certain amount of time. It can be anywhere from a year to 20 to 30 years if you are on a waiting list.
Which is incredible. It sounds like, if you're my age, 20, 30 years, I may not be around 20, 30 years from now.
And that's especially true for people from Mexico, the Philippines, India, China. They have very, very, very long waiting lists. So you may end up, it may be that 20 years down the line or 30 years down the line you may not want to immigrate anymore, or something happens and
or by that time your time ready to go home. Okay.
Yes.
So we also often hear about undocumented immigrants in the United States, and I wanted to ask, so is there an easy way for people to actually immigrate here, or is it really that complicated?
Oh goodness, that's a complex question, but the short answer is it's not simple.
Okay.
And it could be very expensive too. The fees are higher than they've ever been to come forward and submit this process. But depending on the case, that's why we need to analyze each case individually. But if somebody has a current lawful presence, there was something that did not exist before 1996. There are bars that are triggered by departures. So it's a kind of like we have to do like a very thorough analysis of the facts of the case, the history, whether they've been here, whether they applied for a visa in the past, whether they didn't, but the process could be, depending on the case, but it could be, if they're lucky, as quick as maybe a little bit less than 6 months in some cases, and in others up to 20, 30 years.
Wow. That's a broad spectrum and a wide range.
Yeah, it may be that the spouse of a U.S. citizen may not have a ready remedy, and that U.S. citizen spouse cannot do anything for the other spouse who maybe is undocumented, or there may be that the other spouse entered with a visa, overstayed, fell in love years down the line, they married, and then it could be a quick process, depending on the details. We always encourage people to come in so that we can analyze their case. With all the immigration laws are very complex, and so something that may work in a case may not work in another because of a small detail that someone may think it's not relevant when in fact it is. So we always advise people to come for consultations.
Well, and I would imagine, especially with the most recent changes and the fact that with the current administration we seem to have more changes coming down the road and stuff, that it might be a good idea for anyone right now, really, that hasn't had a consultation or legal advice on their immigration status within, like, let's say, last 12 to 24 months, to maybe either come, talk to someone at the Catholic Charities Santa Clara County program, or another credible program.
Yes, and that's extremely important. And we even, and you pointed out something really, that's something big for us. Even if someone had a legal assessment a while ago and they were told there's no immediate remedy, it may be true. What we want people to realize is that they need to know their rights, and even though there's maybe for some categories of people no immediate remedy, if they end up in court, some remedies are available in front of an immigration judge.
Okay.
As long as you know your rights, you don't sign your rights away, and you ask for a hearing, and many people do have a right to that hearing in front of an immigration judge, something that they couldn't get before just applying affirmatively, they could get in front of an immigration judge. So we always tell people, come in, let's talk about your options that you may not have right now, but if something were to happen, you may have.
So do you have any tips for immigrants that might help them in, like, finding assistance or choosing an attorney, that sort of thing?
Well, yes. What we do recommend is that people verify whether the person that is giving them advice is licensed to do so. So the California State Bar.
But also, Association, you can check a license. Many government websites, you can actually check to see whether businesses are valid.
And we're mostly concerned with unscrupulous providers who are not attorneys, who are not accredited by the Department of Justice, and are offering legal advice when they shouldn't, and they get people into trouble, basically.
Well, and I know here in Santa Clara County, that's one of the things that the Sheriff's Department works heavily on, is especially with the Latin residents in the area, is notario publicos. Yes. Because in Mexico and other Latin countries, notario publico is an attorney, or similar to an attorney in those countries.
They have legal education, yes.
But here in the United States, it's simply a notary public. All they do is validate a signature on a document that it's true and correct. So, big difference.
Very big difference, and it's a cultural difference, right?
Right.
You're coming from your old home where, a notario was great. You would go and they would help you out and they would give you legal advice and everything was authorized and legal, and whereas here it is not. And we've seen so many cases of clients coming in with cases that had been poorly, handled by the notarios, and yes, the authorities are trying to crack down on that, and there are several ways you can report that. Unfortunately, many times it happens after they have already, handled poorly many cases.
Right.
So,
right. And by going to people that these fraudsters, for lack of a better term, or scam artists and stuff, that in turn also endangers that person's ability to immigrate. Stuff. It could permanently damage their ability to immigrate, which is a terrible thing. Speaking of which, immigrants are commonly, targeted, much like, elderly and other, potential target demographics, if you will. And so can you tell us about some, other than the notario publicos and stuff, what other types of scams or fraud things, do people from the immigrant community need to be concerned with?
So some of our clients have received phone calls where they're asked for money, and they say, we're ICE agents, and if you, it's almost like they're pretending like they're posting bond, and if they go and buy a money order and deliver it somewhere, that they will leave them alone. And one of the things we tell people is the government officials never call to and ask money over the phone. Never. If you get a call like that, it's a scam, and you need to try to report it. I understand that some people might be afraid to report it, but I would encourage them to do so. The Federal Trade Commission, the Sheriff's Office here in Santa Clara County, also takes note of those reports. So that's one. So the phone call of somebody pretending to be a government official and asking for money, that's extremely common, unfortunately.
And even knocking on people's doors, I've heard. There were some reports of people pretending to be Immigration Customs Enforcement officers and knocking on people's doors and, intimidating them, threatening them, and we've heard reports of that.
So, the important thing to learn there is that, for the most part, government agencies, no matter whether it's the INS, the Immigration Service, whether it's the IRS or anyone else, government agencies typically do not call you over the phone.
No.
And they, never ask you to pay by Visa.
Or personal information. They don't ask you what's your social security. They don't ask you any
because
of that.
they have that information. If they're, typically they would have that information if they are indeed a government agency.
And they mostly intimidate people with who actually have a case pending, maybe. So we always tell people, if you really have an attorney or an accredited representative and someone calls, refer them to your attorney. If they truly are from immigration, they should contact your representative anyway.
And the other thing to mention is that most scammers are not going to give you a valid telephone number, right? To have anybody call back. Let me take your number. Do this,
valid
right?
Point, yes.
Actually, there was for a while people were receiving calls from something that was mimicking that USCIS National Customer Service number. It showed up as the 1-800-275.
Oh yeah, no, they spoof the phone numbers.
So they do that. But and then
I had a similar thing. I was getting calls from the Federal Trade Commission office, and called them to let them know that I was getting these scam phone calls that were being spoofed with their number. So, and they were like, yeah, we've heard that. But yeah, bottom line is to, really look at it. So a couple of other things, one of the things we hear about is ICE. And ICE in the community, and there's been ICE raids earlier this year. I read on Nextdoor, ICE was stopping traffic on Highway 87 in the commute to check people's IDs, which of course turned out to be completely false. So what would you tell people, whether they should be concerned about ICE agents or where that fits, especially here in Santa Clara County, since we're a Sanctuary County.
The latest reports have been, if ICE was present in the community, if Immigration Customs Enforcement was present in the community, it was usually because they had a warrant and they were looking for someone who maybe had a criminal record. They were having an active investigation against. So they were looking for a specific person, usually. We haven't heard yet, and hopefully won't hear reports of just plain raids going after people just because. But even so, it's extremely important for people to know their rights. If an ICE officer stops someone, even a U.S. citizen, and just asks personal questions, if they're not looking for you specifically, they don't have a warrant, you're not obligated to respond to their questions. Just like you learn from the movies,
right,
in school, civic school. No, you have the right not to respond to questions, right? So we always want people to come to go to these Know Your Rights presentation and to actually watch, if possible, some of the videos that
I was just going to say, you guys recently did some videos on these particular topics, on some of the more important topics.
We invite people to go to our website. There is a link to these videos, and what these videos do, and we have this awesome team at Catholic Charities that put all of this together in a very nice way, enacting what if a nice officer knocks on my door? What do I do? What if they come to work? Or what if I get stopped on the street? And everything is enacted, because it's one thing to actually get drilled into you, well, do this, say that, these are your rights, and it's another thing to actually see people acting it out, and you can imagine yourself, this is how I would react. I can show it to my family members. We can act it at home. We can, if this is something that is stressful for the family and it's a big concern. And depending on where you live in the country, the reality is that for some people, this may happen. Thank God we are in a sanctuary county in California, in Santa Clara County actually, and all across California there are many counties that have declared themselves sanctuary. And if I may, we could explain a little bit what this means. Basically, the local law enforcement authorities are saying we want the community to trust us. We want the community to report crimes. We want the community to come forward and be witnesses where we need them to be, and we will not ask them about their immigration status, so that they can feel they can trust us and come forward when we need them, so we can do our job as law enforcement and protect the community. Right,
because law enforcement is more interested in protecting the community, and it's not their job nor their want at this point in a sanctuary city to enforce immigration law for ICE.
Immigration Customs Enforcement does. They have a budget. They will be present. They will do their job.
And there are ICE agents in the county, and they do their job. But the police's position is basically not to assist that. At
the expense of the trust of the community.
Exactly. Yes, and I would just like to add to that even in sanctuary cities, if somebody is a violent criminal, then yeah, of course they are willing to actually work more with ICE. But just overall, no. And so when people think that law enforcement in a sanctuary city is not allowing ICE to do their job, that's actually a misconception. Of course, it's quite the contrary. It just means we're not doing your job for you.
Right.
You do your job, we do our job, and we work together according to our missions.
And there's one particular aspect where this is extremely important. As I was saying at the beginning, people in the United States who have been victims of crime, if they report the crime, if they feel confident that the police and the authorities will protect them, and they will, report the crime, help in the investigation, prosecution of the crime, they may get an immigration benefit. But if they are afraid to actually come forward because they think, well, if I'm going to report the person who's beating me up or who robbed me or who assaulted me, then I'm the one who's going to be punished for it, then that's going to be difficult.
Yes.
So anyway, and at the end here, just so our viewers know, we have some slides that we're going to show. They have some very important websites, so our viewers may want to go grab a piece of paper and pen and stuff. But as we close up, and I would love to thank both of you for being here.
Thank you.
But what if you had just one closing message for the immigrant community, what would that be?
I'll say you go first. You're much better at that.
We would like people to people who do not have a status to have a family preparedness plan.
Okay.
If something were to happen to someone in the family who maybe doesn't have a status, if that's a parent or a sibling or someone, they need to have their papers in order.
Okay.
So we want people to have their passports, to have their their birth certificates and all of that. We want people to save money because they will need legal advice.
Right.
And they will maybe go to court and they will need money for that. We want people to know their rights and exercise them. And please watch our videos because they're very instructive.
Right.
We would like people to
Well, to seek the advice of reputable organizations like Catholic Charities or with private attorneys.
And if they come to your offices, you do have a list of people that you can
referrals.
So, anyways, well, thank you very much, Mina and Juan Gil, for being with us tonight. Be sure to take a look at the information on how to contact Catholic Charities, and thank you for enjoying the show.
Thank you.
No, thank you.